Hi, I'm Bobby C. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about 5 key tips for owners of Entegra Odysseys or the related Jayco products. The Greyhawks and the RedHawks are very similar in Class C, so a lot of what we're going to talk about today I think you'll find very similar, if not identical. So if you're thinking about getting an Entegra Odyssey, or you just got one, or even if you've had one for a while, I think you might find this interesting. So again, 5 key tips, so let's get started. Before we get into the video, I'd like to ask you to think about subscribing to my channel. There's going to be a lot of a lot of how-to things on here that might be helpful if you have one of these units or a similar unit. Number 1, suspension systems. My particular model is an Entegra Odyssey 26M. So this model is 29 foot long. It has the Murphy bed layout in this floor plan. So Entegra Odysseys make a variety of different Odysseys, from anywhere from 25 foot long to well over 30. So what I'm going to talk about now somewhat has to do with the type of model that you have. So we're going to talk about suspensions. So what I found is that many people who buy these are expecting that it's going to kind of drive like their pickup truck. It's not, okay? It's not a pickup truck. It's longer, it's heavier. If you're towing, there's another dynamic to it. So a lot of that is going to affect your suspension. So the Entegra Odysseys are built on the E450 chassis. Mine is a 2022, so it does have the Godzilla engine, which is awesome. Great engine from Ford. So the E450 chassis is built to handle the weight of many of these vehicles. So, I like that. There are some parts of it, though, are really not adequate or sufficient for keeping the unit stable. One thing I would encourage you to do, because it will affect how the vehicle handles, is please check your tire pressures. Make sure they're set appropriately. You check your tire pressures inside the door jamb, usually on the driver's side of your RV, and it will give you the correct tire pressures to have. So you want to maintain that pretty much within that range, or it'll have a dramatic effect on your stability of your RV. Quick story, when I bought this RV, I bought it in Orlando, Florida, and Orlando's right off of I-4, so that's where I had to go to get to my campground the night that I bought it. And I-4 was very, very busy, so I'm driving the RV for the first time. It's all over the road. It's squirrely. What's going on, So when I got to the campground the next day in the morning, I checked the tire pressures, and some of them were seriously overinflated. So brand new RV, so you definitely want to check that. That's the first thing you should check to make sure your unit is operating properly, because if your pressures are too high, you'll get that problem that I had, and if they're too low, of course, you can have tire problems. So you don't want either. So make sure you check your tire pressures. So the Entegra Odysseys, there's a couple of different Facebook groups for these units. So there's an Entegra Odyssey owners and wannabes group, so that's for people who are thinking about buying one. And also the one for our particular unit is Entegra Odyssey and 26M and Jayco RedHawk 26M sister products, where it's good to get information that's specific to your particular unit. So you can learn a lot of things in these Facebook groups. They've been very, very helpful. So I encourage you to check that out if you're thinking of one, or if you have one. It can help you out in a pinch. The one suspension modification that I did on this unit that really was tremendously helpful in terms of improving the stability of the ride was I did add the Safety Plus. That's an aftermarket product that you can purchase. It's from a company around Atlanta, and you can go there and they'll actually install the product for free if you buy it from them, or you can install it yourself. I'll put a link to a video below. I installed mine. I bought it on Amazon, and I installed it, and it really wasn't that difficult. So you can save yourself some money if you're a little handy and you have a few tools. It's possible to do it, but I would encourage anyone with an RV on this 450 chassis, Class C like this, you know, you want to replace the stock steering stabilizer. If you check out my video, you'll see what the difference is between that stock steering stabilizer in this and the Safety Plus. So that's the main suspension upgrade that I think is universal. Most people would recommend that. The other thing I will tell you is, particularly if you're doing it yourself, if I was to do it again, I would have also replaced the front steering stabilizer bar that's in it. It's for a thicker one that, you know, those are available too. That should be done at the same time. You can do it at the same time. I didn't do that. I kind of wish I did now. When people start to experience some of these stability issues with their RV, some people want to go crazy and add steering stabilizers, sumo springs. There's a variety of different products, rear sway bars. You know, there's a variety of different products that you can install for these to improve the stability, and they do help. In my case, you know, I tow a small Fiat, so the towing changes the dynamics also. I just did the Safety Plus, and for the most part, I'm pretty good. A lot of people, you know, add multiple things, and my only suggestion to you is, if you have the money and you want to do that and you want the perfect ride, great. Or if you're in places like out west where it gets really windy in some of the trips, you might need it. But my suggestion to you is, do a couple things at a time, one or a couple things at a time. Like I said, the Safety Plus and the front sway bar or stabilizer bar, whatever they call it, I would suggest doing that first, and then see what it's like, and then from there you can do the other things. So there are some suspension upgrades that are actually built in to this particular unit stock, and I think many, if not most, of the Entegra Odysseys. I don't know how well you can see this, but there are, in my particular unit, the 26M Hellwig helper springs from the Hellwig is the manufacturer, and you can see they're on a bracket here, and they're attached to basically add some stability to keep from the rear from bouncing around. Now, if you look at these springs, these helper springs, leaf springs, you can see there's a pretty good gap from the top of the bracket to the springs themselves. So, which is probably about, I'd say about 4 inches even. Now, it came that way from the factory. Hellwig says that should be adjusted down to a 2-inch gap between where it attaches on top and the leaf springs. So, you know, this is something that I'll probably do in the future, is to get that tightened down quite a bit. I don't know if I'm going to try to do it myself or take it to a suspension shop. So here's the point I want to make about doing a number of suspension upgrades up front. How long are you going to keep your unit? If you look at the average cycles of how long people keep theirs, it's fairly short. And you don't want to be like a guy I saw who did hog wild, really did all the upgrades, and then a year later he was selling his unit. So you're not going to get your money back out of it. So think about it, see what you need first, try a couple things first at a time, and go from there. Number 2, slides. We love this floor plan. It's got the white interior, which we like a lot, and you know, it's been really nice. We're glad we got this particular model. Now, this particular model has a power gear slide. It is a full wall slide, so as you can see from the dinette to the back is a full wall slide. And the power gear slide is new to us. We previously had a Jayco Melbourne which had Schwintek slides. I'll explain the difference in a minute. But this particular slide has one motor. It's under the sofa, and it operates the entire slide. Both of these slides are made by Lippert Industries, so there is a Lippert app, Lippert Now, that you can go on and get some support and documentation, things like that. You can actually also chat with a tech. If you get into trouble with something, you can talk with the tech, and sometimes that can be very helpful. It did help us with our Melbourne one time. We were about to head for Florida, and we had the slide out, and it wouldn't retract the day before we were supposed to leave. So the tech helped us get through that. As far as the power gear slide, the way it's supposed to operate, when you extend the slide, you push the extend area until it goes all the way out, and then you stop. That's different from my Melbourne when it had the Schwintek slides, and we were told that when you extend the Schwintek slides all the way, if you have an Odyssey with the Schwintek slides, you actually hold down the extend button longer for 5 seconds or so, because the twin motors on it synchronize when that happens. So that is something that it is a difference you need to be aware of. So the power gear slide for us has, for the most part, not been a problem, except when we first bought the unit. So when we first bought the unit, we brought it home from the dealership, and I noticed when we got back to the campground that the slide sort of had bumped out a little bit from the side of the RV, so it was a couple inches out, and it moved. So I wasn't quite sure what had happened there. I thought maybe I didn't put it in all the way. The problem that we found out was the slide had moved, and it had moved because there's a brake on the motor itself, and the brake can be released, which is a good thing if you ever need to move the slide in manually. However, I was having problems with my bed, and that was really related to the slide not locking, because what would happen is when you extended the slide all the way, we would do that, we would put the bed down, and then by morning we couldn't get the bed to operate properly because the unit, that sidewall, had actually slid a little bit, and there are limit switches on there, and if it's not in the correct position, you're not going to be able to retract the slide or move the bed. So had a mobile tech out and found out that's what the issue was. He managed to get, after a while realizing what the issue was, he managed to get it locked again, and since then we haven't had a problem. Now, many of the other Entegra Odysseys have the Schwintek slides, and that's a different system. They typically have 2 motors, one on each end of the slide, and it's just a different system. Since the pandemic, there seems to have been a lot of problems with those slides. I can't speak to that myself, but again, I'm pretty happy with the slide system that we have, the power gear. So. Number 3, power systems. All right, batteries. Let's talk about that first. So this is your chassis battery. It's a pretty typical wet cell chassis battery. So the key to this is you want to make sure that your terminals are clean, that these do require some maintenance, so you need to check them periodically to see if they need additional fluid. If they do, you add distilled water, not standard water. So pretty typical. You'll probably get maybe 3-4 years out of it possibly, and then you'll need to replace it. I store mine outside, so I'll probably be replacing mine in probably about 3 years, I guess. If your chassis battery fails to start the vehicle, you get in it, you turn the key, and it's dead, there is an auxiliary start feature on these that can cross over and draw some current from the house battery. So if your house batteries are good, hopefully that gives you opportunity to start it that way by turning the key and pushing the auxiliary start. I've drained my chassis battery before, and it has come in handy on other RVs. There are a lot of different ways to maintain the charge on your chassis battery, particularly like mine. If you store it outside, you could use some sort of a trickle charger. In my case, I bought a small actually solar panel from Harbor Freight, which I leave on my dash, and I keep it plugged into this outlet here, this power outlet, which is always on. So that does trickle charge your battery and help to maintain it. These are my house batteries, or the batteries that maintain the power for the coach. And this was the original one. It's a Harris. It's a wet cell deep cycle battery, and then I added an additional one, this diehard battery. And you know, I have them hooked up in parallel, which is how you have to do it if you add two. Now, those batteries that I have are wet cell batteries, and you're not going to get much out of them. So if you're going to be boondocking, or you're planning to do some other things with it, you're going to need a little different setup. So those batteries for us won't even make it through one nighter at a Cracker Barrel. You know, about 3 a.m. in the morning, our refrigerator starts going bonkers because it's out of power. I don't know, but and we're only using really lights at that point. So, but for us, we don't do boondocking, and most of the time, especially when we're in Florida, we're at a campground and we're connected to shore power. So I'm not going to invest in lithium batteries for my situation. If you were full timing like my nephew, he's got a large fifth wheel. He's got the whole deal. He's got, you know, major solar setup and multiple lithium batteries, and you know, you're going to have to be thinking about that kind of a setup if your plan is to do a lot of boondocking. So, you know, again, whatever fits your needs. Don't buy more than you have to is what I'm doing, because, you know, it's pretty expensive. The lithium batteries are pretty expensive, but if you need them, you need them. Like my nephew, full timing, he works out of there, he lives out of there, you got to have it. So got to fit your needs. Now, if you have a nice setup for your power needs, please, you know, comment below, give people some suggestions. This could be a resource for them, what your setup is and what works for you. Even if it's just different battery setups for your house batteries than I have, please add to the comments, and we'll have a resource available. My 26M has an Onan OG4000 generator that works very well. One thing to keep in mind, your generator will not operate if you have less than a quarter tank, or I think you have to have a little bit more than a quarter tank of gasoline. It is a gasoline generator, so that's so of course you don't run out of gas from running the generator, but it does work very well. On my model, most of the panels are like this. This is the start and stop for your generator. So if you want to start your generator, you do need to prime it first, and it seems like you got to do this a few times. You will prime it by pushing down where it says stop. You'll see the red light come on, and that indicates that it is priming. So you try that a few times before you start the generator. Eventually it will start. It might take you a few tries at it. One of the really important things about maintaining your generator is that you do need to run these monthly, and so to keep them fresh, and you also need to run them under load monthly. Okay, so what does under load mean? Under load means that when you start your generator, you want to apply some electrical load to it. So you could do that by opening and closing your slide. You can do that by turning on your TVs. You could do that by running your air conditioner. But to exercise the generator properly, you do need to run it under load. One last point I'd like to make about power and drains on your system. You have outside storage compartments, and these outside storage compartments, I believe all of them, have lights. And as you can see, here's the light. Now the light is a 3-position light, so these run off the chassis battery, so your power has to be on in the coach. But there are 3 positions: on, off, and one is a motion position. Honestly, I always get them mixed up, so I typically will leave them on off, because if you have them on and you close the storage door, that light's still going to stay on. It'll drain your house batteries. So be careful with that. Those of you that are smart enough might mark your switches, like I should do, to show which one is the motion sensor, because it is handy at night when you're going in here and the light comes on when you open the door. Number 4, water systems in your freshwater tank. Let's talk about freshwater systems for a minute. So the Jaycos and the Entegras have very nice, what they call water centers or utility centers, with different valve positions to do different things. This is identical really to the Jayco Melbourne that I had this whole setup. So right now I'm set on 3 and 5. That is normal. So in a normal setting is when you're going to be running off of your freshwater tank. Right, I'm not doing that right now, but the last trip that I had, I usually have water in the freshwater tank, so that as we're traveling, you can use the facilities if you need to, things like that, wash your hands. So that's why it's set there. I did, on my particular unit, I had to replace the water pump. It got replaced under warranty. I had a bad water pump, so that's the other issue that I've had with the RV since I've owned it. When this is working, you turn on your water pump switch and you'll be able to pump water from the freshwater tanks. So I did another video on how to sanitize your water lines and clean your water lines. I'll put a link to that below as well. Also, I've done a video about winterizing this. So there's different settings for sanitizing and winterizing, as you can see here. There's also a separate setting for sanitizing your freshwater tank, which that one video will show you how to do, cleaning your water lines. Normally, when I go to a campground, I'm on 2 and 6 city fixtures. You're hooked up to the facilities at the campground for fresh water. If you need to fill the tank, I used to stay at a state park where you had to fill your freshwater tank when you went in, and you would do that on the city fill tank. That's the 1 and 6 setting. That would be if you need to fill your freshwater tank from city water connection. So, and the other thing is a country fill, which is kind of an odd name for it, but basically it's 1 and 4. And this would be if you're, for example, you're going to pull up some fresh water from a jug or from some other water source and pull it up into your freshwater tank. That's the setting that you would use there. But 99% of the time you're either at city fixtures or you're traveling and maybe you've got water in your freshwater tank and you're at 3 and 5. So pretty good setup. There are some freshwater drains down here as well. Low point drains when you need to drain your system. So this is typical of really any Jayco product. It's very easy to operate. You want to have a freshwater filter, and there's also an internal water filter on these units, and in my case it's located under the bathroom sink, which isn't bad, not a bad location. Some of these units have them in Odysseys, I've got to speak about now, in horrible locations to get to. So I'm very fortunate with that, but I do use the internal water filter. You change the water filter cartridges in that probably a couple times a year. All right, this would be important if you have, mine's a 2022, a 2020, 2021 unit of these. I don't know if they've corrected this problem or not, but the fresh water tanks, you'd fill it up, you'd leave to go to a campground or whatever. By the time you got there, your freshwater tank would be empty. And what was happening was these were siphoning out. I don't know what the issue was. Some people say it's because in manufacturing they put the lines in the tanks too deep. I'm not sure, although the only thing that I've learned is there's the correct fix for it. And the fix for it is pretty simple. You can overfill your freshwater tank, and to prevent that from bursting the tank, there are some, actually in my case, I think there's 4 lines that come off the freshwater tank that if you overfill it, water comes flushing out of those lines. That's also where it's siphoning out of. So to prevent it from siphoning, you need to get those water lines higher than the tank, or at least as high as the tank. So to do that, basically what I found is you have to really screw them to the underside, the floor, so that they're up high enough. I tried using wire ties at first, didn't work. This is the only way. You need to get them up high. Now when you do this, something important to remember is you want to use, in my case, in this particular unit, I use like 1/2-inch screws with some, there's really not much weight to these, so it's just some plastic clamps to hold the lines in place, and screw them up to the floor. If you get any screws more than that, you're going to find those are going to come up through your inside floor. So be very careful when you're doing that, but that is the fix, and that will correct that problem. Number 5, bathroom maintenance. Now we want to spend a little time talking about the dirty part of camping, and that is black tank maintenance. So if you have a problem with black tanks, it can ruin your trip. I've been there. So you don't want to have that. Number 1 I would tell you is water is your friend. Okay, you want to use a lot of water, and especially if you've got a situation where you're using a lot of toilet paper, use the right kind of toilet paper. I use the Scott's, get it from Walmart. It disintegrates pretty quickly, and use the right products to treat the solids, and you'll be fine. Now, use a lot of water. That's number 1. Don't skimp on the water when you're flushing the toilet, things like that. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the products. All right, here's the products that I have used and I would recommend. So I have used this Valterra product, Pure Power Blue. It comes in a larger jug, and you can put it into the smaller containers. I've used it for a while. It's good. It leaves a great smell, in using the commode. So I like it from that aspect. But the one that really is the best, I believe, are the unique products. This RV Digested is, if you look at some of the shows on YouTube that have tested these things, that one usually comes up the best. So I'm going to use up the Pure Power Blue Valterra product and I think switch over to the unique product. I do believe it is better, but both will do the job. Now, one other thing that's unique to the toilet in my 26M, I want to talk about for a second. It may be the same in other Entegra Odysseys. Now, when you flush this commode and open it up, the water shut off now, but down below there is this is different from my Melbourne, there is a little shelf under there. One of the things that I found is that shelf can accumulate particularly toilet paper, so you have to be very careful with the amount of toilet paper that you're putting down there, and again, water. One of the things that I found that works to keep that shelf clean and free of debris is to just hold down the pedal slightly. I don't, again, have the water in here, but that would allow it to fill up the entire bowl, and then once you have the entire bowl full, flush it, and it gives it a little stronger flush. Some people use a 5-gallon bucket to do the same thing, but I think you can do it just by using your own commode that way. So that is something to watch. The shelf in here, it can accumulate that debris, and on one trip it caused a blockage for us, and it was a heck of a time to get that straightened out, but we did. Okay, on the outside of my 26M, I have 2 water inputs. One is for the fresh water tank, and that means your fresh water tank. The black is for black tank flush, and I marked them so I don't make a mistake. But you want to use your black tank flush to maintain your bathroom and your toilet system, and to if you go to, we have a pilot that we go to nearby, and I get gas, and then I'll go ahead and do a black tank flush. So you hook up, you open your black tank valve after you dumped, you open your black tank valve, and then you hook a separate water hose, not your fresh water hose, to a spigot or something at the dump area, and then you turn the water on, and it basically will flush out you have an internal spray system in your black tank. It'll flush out debris, toilet paper, and other things that will eventually turn really pretty clean. So you want to use that to keep your black tank clean, and do that as often as you can. This really isn't about the black tank system, but it's about you're running water through your sink and your showers your different sinks, and if you're living in it for an extended period like we do in Florida, for example, for 2 or 3 months, you can start to develop a smell in your gray tank system. So one way to correct that I found works pretty well is to get yourself a small bottle of Dawn. You can get that at the dollar store. And what you want to do is pour the whole bottle down into your kitchen sink here and run some water, and eventually that will foam up through and actually foam through the system and clean your gray tank system. So that's a good way to do that. Now you've had all 5 of my key tips for the Entegra Odysseys. I have an extra one for you. It's related to our specific unit, the 26M, and it's about the Murphy bed. So we got our dog Izzy up there, and her picture of course went right up there. But to operate the Murphy bed, you just remove these 2 cushions. So we put them either up top in the bunk bed area or on temporarily in the dinette, and then you're going to operate this switch. All right, to put the bed down, we're going to turn the switch on, and then this is up and down. It's that simple. So here we go. And that's it. Now we find the bed to be really pretty comfortable for us. It's sort of a firmer mattress, and we like that. So it depends on what you like, but of course you take this cushion, you flatten it there, and it makes for a nice bed. The height is, my wife is a little shorter than I am. I'm 6'2", she's probably 5'3", so she's got to jump up in there a little bit, but it's not a big deal. Okay, this is an outside hatch area that opens up, so you can access some of the area of the bed. You can't really access too much over there, but you can here. And here's some things that you should look out for. The main problem people have been having with these is with the straps, and the roller needs to be aligned properly. You see that roller is pretty close to the edge, but it's not on the edge, and so it's not rubbing and fraying the edges of the web. That can happen. That one over there, really hard to see, but it's about the same. So we haven't had that particular problem with it. These are really hard to get to, almost impossible. But you can adjust the straps on the front of the bed, which someone did, which I thought was ingenious. So that's possible. Now, the other thing that you want to look for is these brackets. Make sure they are properly secured. In my case, this was not. I mean, it was really coming off, so I had to secure it properly because it holds this drive shaft in place. Now this is a shorter end, and there's a longer end that goes down to the other end. It's got the same type of bracket, so those brackets need to be secured properly, or you're going to have movement. The final thing I want to mention to you is there is a limit switch, and again, I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a limit switch that right there that we had to relocate. Now that switch tells the bed when it's you put it all the way down to stop spooling and turning the motor. Some of these problems with the webs have happened to straps because the motor has spinned excessively. This wasn't set right. We actually had to move the position of ours so that when this plate comes in contact with the switch, it will shut off the motor, and then you won't have that excess spooling. So those are the main issues with the Murphy bed. We've been pretty lucky with ours, so I can't complain. There's also apparently some sort of a tool, an adapter or something, that if you wanted to manually crank the bed, and I think it's available from Lippert, there's something that you could get here and put on a power drill, for example, and you'd be able to operate this manually after disconnecting the electric. So I haven't done that yet. Maybe that's something for the future, but we've been pretty lucky with the bed. So there also can be some problems with limit switches on the bed. So just to give you an example, I showed you one outside in the hatch below. where if it's not contacting properly, it's not going to operate properly. Well, the other switches involved are related to the position of the slide. So again, when we were having problems with the motor on our slide, what was happening was the slide would go out, but during the course of the night it would slide back in. We'd be sitting here watching TV, whatever, on the sofa, and we go to put the bed down, and it wouldn't operate because it was sensing that the slide wasn't out all the way, which it wasn't. It was sliding. So that was really a problem related to our motor, the slide motor, rather than the limit switches. But these things have to be in proper position for everything to work. So you always want to check to make sure if you're having a problem operating this bed, that you want to try bumping out your slide, seeing if you were having the same problem I was, because that was the fix for us. We would go and push the slide out with the switch and bump it out, and then the bed would work. So you kind of have to experiment with that. Similarly, the bed won't come down unless the slide is all the way out. So it's the same concept. But other than that, we're really happy with the bed. All right then, so we gave you 5 key tips for Entegra Odysseys, and again, similarly for Jayco, Greyhawks, and RedHawks, a lot of things would apply as well. So I hope you got something out of it, and please comment below if you have other ideas or things that you agree with or disagree with, or just some additional ideas that could be helpful. We're all trying to help each other as RVers. So I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, please hit that subscribe button and give me a big thumbs up. And we'll see you next time, and wishing you happy camping. Bobby C in the RV, signing out.